So we have the GitHub page we sent, and it leads us to this website that has everything we need. And we're really just starting in order. And I am going to just full screen that. All right. So I'll start. So really, I'm breaking this up into 5 different questions, like 5 different sections. And it's like what is Quarto and how to use it. Just a little refresher in case you haven't used it that much, but it isn't hopefully going to be that long of a section. It's just really making sure everybody has the same foundations down. Then moving into theming, which is changing the visual look of your slides. Content or element, which is like how are we adding things to our slides and changing the way they look. Interactivity is like the next step up. So like you're done basically with theming and content, right? Like that is you're showing what you need to show and it's looking the way you want it to look. But interactivity is then this next step that I just find to be fun, where we're adding a little bit more flair and things happen when we advance the slides, and it will make more sense when we get to it. And then lastly, as a roundup, and because I'm a little bit uncertain on time, we will go through some different extensions that I have created and a lot of people have created that will work well in your slide crafting journey. Yeah. So we'll just move ahead. Yeah. So what we really want to do here first is just understanding how we can create our Quarto revealjs slides, how the fundamentals about how they work, which is really how do we create a singular slide and a section within our file, some of the term and YAML options that we need to set and how we can change them, how we find new ones, and a way to we sadly need to understand what a div and what a span is, and that will become needed later. So we're just bringing it up now because that is technically a HTML specific thing that we will be using later. But it will all make sense. So all of the beyond this workshop, I also have this like quote unquote but it's like most likely always will be just a web book because this is going to be a pain to print. So everything that you will see in this workshop should also be in the book, but in a readable format instead of here like in a workshop format. And it also covers some things not in this workshop, but there's also a couple of things in the workshop that isn't in the book. So we're just trying slowly making sure everything's here. So the question really is like why Quarto? And I think most of you here, I assume, already know a lot of the benefits of why we love Quarto. But to those that aren't aware yet, it comes from all the work that was done with our Markdown being bundled up. Now we have Quarto, which is like a literary programming device where we have a file that essentially is Markdown that then can be turned into other formats like PDF, Word, HTML, so on and so forth. But it's also been extended here to work with the revealjs JavaScript framework that can create slides. And the reason why we want to use both together is that we're getting all the benefits from Quarto. But one of them is that we have our code cells that render uh, the results out as we need them. So instead, how you would normally do it if you did it like in a Word document or a LaTeX document without using Quarto or a Markdown is you would have your script, run the code, and then like copy paste the files over. But then the problem really becomes, what if my data changes? Now I need to remember which files have updated, what numbers are changed. You're just putting this chunk in your Markdown file, and it will just input it in. We just put all our code chunks in our Quarto files. They're being moved along, rendered, moved along into our Markdown files and into the document itself. So we never have to worry about topping things over. Everything stays in one. And this can become less useful here in slides because it's less of a report and more of a where we use slides is typically different than other types of uh, reporting systems. But it's still useful getting all of these wins, especially with charts and stuff. It just works how we would expect. Um, it's HTML native, so it is technically a web page. So I'm showing the slides right now, and it's just a website. And we're getting all the benefits from it being a website. So you can put animations, you need to put videos, and you just embed a YouTube video in here, and it should just work. But we also Emil to do the code. We're still not like moved out. I'm not showing it right now, but I just thought about it right now. But we still did all like a lot of the latent features. So if you want to put an iteration in there, there are HTML frameworks around that Quarto just supports natively. So if you use latent like formulas to make an iteration, it will also just render as you would expect, even though it's a website. So we're really getting like the best of both worlds. And if you really need to, there are ways to turn our slides that we're creating with Quarto and reavealjs into PDFs and PowerPoint. One of them, actually, if you go to the bottom left in the slides or press M, go to Tools, there's this PDF export mode. Clicking that and then doing like the Command P or the Windows equivalent to print the page, it will generate the PDF for us for everything that it makes sense for. So obviously we can't print a embedded YouTube video to PDF. And likewise, if we have animations happening or slide transitions, they obviously also feel like disappear. But everything else should work. And if it doesn't, like let us know and we can like fix most of these things. Um, so yeah, like even though so you might want a PDF or PowerPoint, we can get to that most of the time if that is the required deliverable for you. All right. So the first step you will make really looks like this. So with Quarto, we have let's start with YAML at the top. And the only required thing here really is this format reveal.js. So that is telling Quarto, hey, this thing needs to be reveal.js. And then some of these, everything else just modifies what it looks like. So here, title and author, if you're setting them, creates a nifty title slide for you with the title and author. But if you omit them, it just won't do it. But this is also where we can put in other arguments that we'll show later that will be useful and that I also set. But then the rest of the document is exactly how you would expect a Quarto document to look. We have some content in different ways. We can bold things, we can make lists. And the important note here is we are creating slides by using what called an H2 header. So the hashtag or pound symbol, putting two of them and then some text is what creates the next slide. You don't have to put text there. So if you just do the two hashtags and then the new line, you get a slide without like a header. on it, and that's fine. So this code right here will then produce like this slide that we're seeing right here, where our first slide, everything is now rendered to HTML. We have our code and it's being evaluated and put in how we would expect. And there's two ways of really doing this. Like one of them is you go to command line and do like Quarto render, and in the name of your file, it produces the HTML. You can, if you're already in a repo and it's the only thing, or at least if it's called index, I'm pretty sure you can just do Quarto render. You don't need to specify the name. There's also if you're in a studio or positron and you're in a Quarto document, there should be a little render button you can just press to. So there's a little bit of affordance as well. Another thing you can do is the Quarto preview, which I use a lot. So if you're actively working on a document, and this isn't reavealjs specific, this is just a Quarto thing. When you preview, it will re-render as needed. A lot of times they're like on save or something like that. So you can do a two-sided view in your editor, having like I like Quarto on the left side, the rendered slides on the right-hand side. And then whenever you write, you see the updates on the live as it happens. And all of this is also just a thing. There's a button for it in our IDEs that will handle all of that for you. And we just have a few presentation tools as well, where like if you're in the slide, you like obviously go back and forth. There's also full screen. There's a speed view, which I'm let's ignore it. It's fine. It's only recorded. If you press speed view, you now see the slide you're on and the next slide coming up. You have a little timer. The timer is from when you started the speed view. And then let's say you also like click it to like reset if like so you that so if you're in a more of a time crunch, you know where you are, you can see what's coming up. There's also this like the bottom right area is for notes. So you can also include speed notes. So these will only appear for you in the speed view. But where this is actually like useful is when I created this speed view, and if I can make this happen, right? So now I'm doing like a little two browser window situation. So the left-hand side is the slides, and the right-hand side is the slides in speed view. But as I advance in one of them, both advances, so you can use speed view in a situation where you can have two monitors, and you just share the main one, and then you put the speed view on like the one that you're not sharing with other people. So that's the thing. I don't use it that much. Also, I know for Posit we don't have a way to do it, so I practice a lot without speed review, but it's there if you need it. And it's a great place to put things in. All right, YAML header real fast. So we already saw the format reveal.js and the title and author, but you can put a bunch of other stuff in there too. And um, here's just a couple of them I find like useful for a thing. So we can like have slide like you can change slide number, progress, bunch of different things we can really set in here. And there is a lot. And this is like how you do it. You say format reveal.js and then put all the ones in it. And they will then update globally. And here's how we did it. Since we set the footer, now each slide has the same footer, and we also changed like everything else. I see a question. So the question is, is it possible to save the speed of your notes somewhere or to write them while you're creating the slides? So you write them as you are writing the slides themselves. So let me show real quick. So here I'm in a slide. Let me find it. Here we have a slide that. So the way, and if I preview it right here, so this is like a little bit of this will come later. So here we see the first slide with the objectives. The way you add, but if you do, oh, speed of use don't work in here. But the way you would write the notes is you would add this div right here with notes, and you say, these are my notes. A preview, a then, and if I then pop it out and press speed review. Oh, and this is, yeah. So now I have my notes here. So you add the notes with this little notes div within the slide, and they will then be transported in here. And my preview is messing up a little bit right now. But that's essentially how you do. Ooh, this is having a lot of fun right now. All right. Hope that answered your question. Um, um, yeah. So the main options I think you should really know about, if that's all you need to know, is you want to know about the theme, which we will show later because that's important to do the theming. Width and height. So Quarto reavealjs slides have this one thing I don't love, where the content of the slides, depending on how you put it on, changes with your aspect ratio. So if I can, it's really more of images, but depending on how we are having your aspect ratio of your content, it can mess it a little bit. And we also have what I'd like to think of the chart area. And I don't like the default that much. So the default height and width gives you more space on the sides of your slides. So I typically do 1280, 720 as my width and height. That makes it a little bit wider because a lot of screens now are just a little bit wider. So I always set those. Eto is that's a standard thing, whether do you show code or not. So it defaults to false when you're in the reavealjs slide. So if you have code, it doesn't show the input code, it only shows the results. So like the chart and whatnot. So depending on what you need, you either want to just set it to true globally or true for each chunk that you wanted. But this one is also a thing you can just set in each chunk as you do. The total light numbers is on by default and it's fine, but I find sometimes it's a little bit cluttering, especially if you're not having that many lines of code. So I think that we have to be turned off. Yeah, so we don't have some options. These are the line numbers right here. On the left-hand side, we have these gray numbers telling you what line is which. They're on by default. You can turn them off with that YAML argument. And so it's really just a preference. I a lot of times turn them off, especially if you have large uh, font for your code. You end up only having like 10 lines. Um, that like you just say like line so and so. You don't necessarily need to reference by line. The last one is really important, and if you don't set like it kind of adds a lot is the page title, and maybe I said it right. So here, if you look on my browser tabs, it says Slidecrafting workshop, what is Quarto? Because I set the page title to that string. Because if you don't do it, you um I think you just did like that index or like some non-informative names in your tabs. And it's just nice that when people see like go on your website and your slides, it says a thing. That is a little bit useful. All right, last, uh, what is like a slide? Like, well, we did kind of what a slide is, but we need to also understand what diffs and spans are. So we do the double hashtag to do a new slide. If you do three of them, it just becomes a smaller header inside, so it doesn't create a slide break. It's the same one. But a single one is what we call a section slide, which is really just a title-only divider, and we'll show it right now. So here we're doing part one as a section, part two as another section, then a couple of slides within each. And it looks like this. So part one has this other styling where the test is bigger and it's more available, like in the middle. Then we move on to a normal slide, new section, and then a normal slide after. And it has two interesting parts about this. One of them is just if you're doing something longer, especially like how I'm doing, where we're talking about multiple parts that have a clear split in them, adding a section is nice to just be like, all right, now we are signaling we're moving on to something new. Another thing, if you open the menu in your slides, you have all the slides here on a list, and the sections are functional in that list too. So you have this little nice divider that is also like a little bit beneficial as well. But it's really mostly a visual thing. But I find it very useful to like signal a section is done, we move on to the next one. But it's not at all required to include. All right, last diffs and spans. So Markdown can't tell us easily this thing is like something we want to work with. So we want to make a way to uh, denote a section of our content. And because it's we're doing HTML as an output, we will be using diffs and spans. So a div is a very fundamental structure in a HTML page. Really, actually, we can learn a little bit if it's easy. So since it's a website, it is like we have like our HTML body. This is my little bit too small. A little bit. It really is a HTML, a head and a body, and body is where all this stuff is. But then there's a div, and then inside of that's probably another div. And then there's a div with something. So if you're nothing, it's a div, but then there's other more special ones. So here's a little P1 that is a paragraph. Linked are special things. But if you're nothing, you're a div. And we can specify something to be a div, and it's something that can contain any amount of content. Um, a span is some piece of text inside a paragraph. So if we wanted to just highlight this part of our text as a something that needs styling or special attention, we would make it a span. Because if we tried to make this a div, the rendering of it would try to put on a new line. So a span is something that is easily allowed to be inside an existing paragraph, and we need to do both. And just before we move, I know I see a question about ADA compliance. I know that it has improved, and I think Mikaël is in the slide as well, in the chat as well, to help. One of the recent Quarto releases, I want to say 1.10. One of the latest ones had a lot of improvements in um, making it easier to do accessibility rich document. And I know it includes some stuff like ads, but if no one posts, we will like send things out about it afterwards. But that is something that we value, that making sure that most things coming out of Quarto is as accessible as possible. Um, yeah. So the syntax to do a div and a span is like this. So you do this triple colon that by itself makes a span, but a span. Oh no! Oh, sorry. A triple colon by itself diffs us a div, but by itself is not useful. So we can div it a CSS class, which we'll explain in the next section of what that is. But we're using this syntax. So right here, we're creating a div that has these two lines in it, and we're diving it the class center. We can div it more classes, just put a little space between the names. So like period, name of class, space, period, name of the next class. And that's how we do that. A span is done with the square brackets to denote what the span is, and then the curly brackets to put in your class name again. This question right now, I'll take that if you want to nest spans into our spans. Well, so yeah, so if you want to nest diffs, you don't have to increase the number of colons. It will just match to the next one, but actually I will show because this is you can still uh do it better. So if you do, so here we have a span right here that includes something, and we have another span right here. They're both using 3. You can do 4, right? So you can do 4. It just has to be a larger amount than what's inside, because we're essentially nesting. So the outside one just to have a larger number than the inside one. But it doesn't have to be 4. You can do 7, but that's a waste of time to like remember to match everything. And if you're in an IDE, I think if you have the Quarto extension now, you also did this like rainbow nest, but you don't need it. Like, so if I do this, it still works. And if I then like I can more deeply nest everything, deeply nest how much it doesn't matter, but this is more of like it can help you see what happens by having these like I like, especially now with the latest Quarto VS Code extension, we get the rainbows now, so that is helpful a lot. They're not needed though. It's really just to make it nice for you. You should be able to nest spans as well, but then you don't. There's no extra syntax. You would just put another rounding of the brackets inside. But we end up doing a lot of nested uh, diffs. Yeah, so and you can also put many things in the braces. So like multiple classes, but we can also pass other things in. So if you just know, I just want to div it another color, you can pass in the style attribute and just how you would in a HTML setting, and that will be passed in as well. If you do the pound symbol inside, it's technically an ID. It's not as useful. I don't use it as much, but it's good to know. Um, that's a thing. Uh, Order shouldn't matter. Any of this. It's like I try to always put the classes first, but it doesn't really matter what you do. And with we already had nesting. So nesting we can do it. I think I'm saying it doesn't need more than inner ones. Yeah, but you have to start at three, right? It has to be at least three, but then you can go up. And this is just like we're showing that it's working. So here we want some do some red text. So we're adding a span, setting the color. We're adding, making some diffs, change thing, and the blood isn't that much smaller, so that's not great, but that's how it should work. And this really is more of a should really be in the content slides. Um, um, there's this idea of tolerance. So if you're making slides, having things side to side is really important. And this is a great example of how we can use classes and nested diffs. So we create this columns div, and inside of it we put columns and we put some width. And if you're in an IDE, I'm pretty sure we even just have, like if I do columns to column, it's already Thomas as a helper if you have the Quarto extension installed as a little short code. So I end up barely even writing it manually because it just comes as a thing. But this is how it works. We're nesting divs and they have different attributes that makes it so when we didn't have our rendered slides, we now have two columns. So we have a left-hand side and right-hand side. And this is a very useful thing. And this we will see later how much this notion um, um, can be used. All right. I think we're skipping the your turn just for time, but it's in there as a way for you to like make sure you are using um if you want to follow along. There's a question from Eric about positron. I will let Isabel answer that one because she knows so much more about that than I do.
So positron, when you update positron, Quarto will automatically update. So the answer is no, you do not.
Thank you, Isabel. All right, so now we did a very brief overview of how to make slides, as in how to actually make something that renders. But the next question is how can we make them look the way we want them to look? Um, I'm pretty sure there's also an autocomplete column thing in our studio, but I'm not perfect. I haven't used our studio in so long now. But someone else that uses it might be able to answer that. All right. We want to change the way our slides look. And I'm a big fan of this 10-minute theme idea, which is once you know how to do it, which is what we're doing in the slide deck, you should be able to change the way your slides look in 10 minutes or less. Enough where they feel different and where you do. You won't be able to do everything, but you can do enough that it feels I'm happy with where we are. Because you really only have to change the fonts, the colors, and the sizes. That is the vast majority of the visual changes that we have. So the way we specify them is something called CSS, which is a HTML computer sciencey thing, but it's just a way of it's the language specifying how HTML looks. And it comes in a pair. So we are both having selectors and properties. Selectors specify which element we want to modify, and the properties are specifying how they should look. And it's easy just to show it. So this is what CSS looks like. We have the selector here is this line right here, which are saying, so this is saying all the A's, well, A here is just the HTML word for a link. So all the links that have the classes reveal and slide. So so you go through the whole website and find all the divs that are an A type are linked that are also inside of like reveal and slide pass. That's like the classes that are being attached to our slide right now. And then the color and text decorator are the properties. So we can change how they look and in different ways. And there's so many different options. So this is, I don't want to talk about this section too much because it's really easy to find online or with an AI agent. Being like, what's the CSS to make my code bold and twice as big? And there's like a million pages coming up. But this is how you do it.
Emil, do you have any rules of thumb of when you should use the traditional approach like this versus brand YAML?
Yes, that's a great question. Um, Brand YAML is great. If you haven't, so actually, we can just actually I'll have someone post it in the chat. But brand YAML is this YAML notion where you can specify how a document looks in the broad sense. So it has the same notion of color, fonts, and sizes. So you can specify how something looks with the color, fonts, and sizes, but it is made to be output agnostic. So you can specify one brand YAML and it will help you change not just your slides, but also your PDF output, your Word document, your Shiny apps. It really expands more. It's great as a start. The problem is um, at least like sometimes I run into the brand YAML not being um, specific enough. Like it has some great options to modify a lot of things, but eventually I find myself moving into also needing to do some manual CSS. And another reason why brand YAML is amazing and useful is if you're in an organization, because you create one brand YAML for your company that has all your company colors and everything, and you use it across um, your documents, and everything looks the same and everything looks awesome. I typically don't reuse a theme from time to time because I'm less worried about showing what, like, having a brand identity and way more focused on showing what's possible to deal with document styling wise. But brand YAML is great, and you can mix and match too. So you can use brand YAML to do all the things it does well, and then use CSS and SCSS to fill in the gaps in your slides. Yeah. CSS, very powerful, is used on every single website in existence, basically. But sometimes you can feel a little wordy and a little expressive. It's like, oh, maybe not expressive, but like that might be the opposite word of what I wanted. But it can be a lot. So we will be using something called SCSS or SAS. Um, Let me just one moment. Um, so we will be using a language that compiles to SCSS, to CSS, and it's easy just to show. Because like what we do is we write SAS, which then a compiler will turn into CSS. The browser can only understand CSS, so that's what it wants. And this maybe sounds like a lot of work, but the trick is that Quarto can do this for you. So Quarto handles all of this for us. We just have to put in the right file name and put the stuff in it, it just works. There's what's a little confusing with Sass is that there's two, and yeah, and sadly it's like SCSS instead of, maybe I'm saying it wrong. Uh, but it's two syntaxes. So there's the SASS format or the SCSS format, which they do the same thing, but one uses braces and one doesn't use braces. Um, I don't like invisible syntax, so I very partial to the right-hand side of things right here. So retab names. I'm calling SAS is a language and a compiler that makes things that turns something in. SCSS is the syntax we're writing it in, and CSS um, is what comes out and what's being used. And Quarto expects our SCSS files. Anyway, I think it still works without them, but they do it. So it's a question of how do we make a CSS file. So we do it how we would make really any file. You don't your IDE, new file, new file. If it doesn't already have it, you just say test file, and we can say a color red, and we just have to save it as a style SCSS, and then it should work. And then because here I'm in positron, there's a little bit of affordances, so it also knows, oh, this is how you want it to load, and there's like all the little neat things we can do. Um, So I talked a lot about like how we can do it, but why do we now need another language, that another compiler? Why are we adding all these things? And there's a couple of things. One of them is the notion of value. So like really like variables. So if you're programming, this feels like natural to you. Like, oh, we specified once and we use it. And you can technically do this in default CSS, but it's a little bit cumbersome, a little bit, but we can do it easily with SCSS. We specify a value at the beginning, give it a color, and now we can just use this color value where we need it. And when it goes through the compiler, we get the right-hand side out. The reason why this is useful is if you realize, I don't love this blue, I want a slightly different shade of blue, we change it once, everything feeds through. We can write some really neat like it also has loops and like other data structures, so we can do some more. This is more advanced, and I'm not expecting people to actually like use everything I do. Well, this is also in the book, so you can just copy it in. But essentially, if we have a list of colors, so a pair of names and colors, and we wanted to create a bunch of classes based on that, we can do a for loop around it, and it will generate these nice pairs. So that's like kind of nice as well. There's also this nesting idea where if you look at the right-hand side, they all say dot reveal dot slide and then something. Um, but they're kind of the same. Like they're all something that happens inside reveal slide. So it is done through nesting. So we say reveal slide, then a parenthesis, and then we say the remaining part of it, and then so we also get this like neat things, like things that are similar also end up being placed similar places in our style sheet, which is kind of nice. Um, so if and last one, like if catches typos better than CSS does. So if you misspell something, the compiler will say, "Hey, I don't know what this is." And if you try to use a midsummer function, which I didn't use, but that's another thing, if they're not there or misspelled, it will complain. So you find out right away instead of writing it, rendering your slides and say, hey, nothing happened. But it will catch some problems for you. Depending on how you write this SCSS file, it becomes a little bit like our brain YAML file in the sense that we can just move it to the next step. and just modify a little bit if we need to, because it's just another file that, depending on how you write it, is just a generally specifying how things happen. So that's kind of nice. So you just type it over, fix the things, change some stuff, and you're done. So the setup is even better. So I would say 10 minutes for the first time, but then you can really make the slide kind of different in like 2 minutes, but just changing the variables at the top. And another thing that's very important about this thing is you can use however much or however little as possible, because we can just do normal CSS in it. All these other loops, variables are optional add-ins that you can use if you feel like you need them, but you don't have to. So the way we are setting it up is, now that we have a SCSS file, we want to tell the Quarto document where it is. So we use the theme argument in our YAML. And you can technically do more. I always do default. So it's a Thomas separated list of things. I always do default to make sure that I don't do something weird and I'm overriding something. And you put a style in it. You can also do um, Quarto also comes with built-in themes. There's a Dart theme, there's a Dracula theme, a bunch of different themes. You can always start with a built-in theme and just modify what you want, which that's technically what I'm doing here. I'm starting with the default theme and modifying what I want. You can also add more, and the latest file wins. So if you're specifying the linked color in two style sheets, the last file wins. So that's another thing you can do. We have a question about AI. Uh, what models do you recommend to create optimal CSS files for custom themes? I don't know. I believe that CSS, at least for slides, because we're not doing that much. There's so much CSS out there on the web and tools about it that even like the cheapest models do fairly well with it. As long as you point it towards uh like SCSS, and like it needs to know what Quarto revealed slides needs to look like. But other than that, um I think any model can really do it. Like that is, you don't need something fancy for this. Um yeah. The only thing that you need that always hits me a little bit is you need these two comments, because that is what also specifies it. So there's this thing, and you quickly learn just to copy this from your slide that to slide that. And the first, so there's sections that help the SAS compiler weave multiple sheets together, which isn't super important, but we just need to know that they need to be there. And under the first one, we put in our SAS variables, which is the next thing we'll talk about. And all these other custom CSS rules we put under the bottom one. But if you move them to the wrong place, I think they normally still work. They just sometimes messes things up if you do multiple things. And we will also show it, right? Um, yes, fonts. So I alluded to this already. So there's this thing called SAS variables, because we always showed that SAS into variables, and this is done in a really neat way, where now that we are writing revealjs slides, it has already created a bunch of variables that we can now specify in our file, and then everything else updates according to it. So we did so much for free right now. And the three ones that we can set that are about fonts is the presentation heading font, which is what changes this. The top one, and like the section one, bit section one, and the title one. The body text is using this SAS variable, and then all inline code, like the blue text right here and the code plots, is with this monospace. We just set these three variables to something else, and now all the text in our slide will look different. So how do you find it? Um, fast, this is the easiest way. You don't do like fonts.doodle. And am I showing how to do this? Yeah, I will show it. And lately they've been really good at like having these like filters. So like if you know I want like a little bit of a hand-drawn font, there's a button you can press and it will filter to all the hand-drawn ones. So because there's like so many fonts and it'll be hard to find the right ones, but they're getting better at it. So really, and I'll show it real fast because it's easier. You go in here and you say, you find your font, we'll just hit this one. Say, oh, I like this one. It's a very common font. We click that font, and I already had some in there. But you select your families you want, then you click that embedded code, and then we click over here, import, and we copy like this code right here. And that's the code that you're pulling in. Ooh, and I did bad. Yeah, that's how you do it. So that's how you find it. You pit around, you copy the import version, you put it at the top, and then you specify the font families like this. And now your slides look a little bit different. It can be if you're not don't have an eye for fonts, which I don't really have an eye for fonts, they can be hard to tell it's different. But if you put them side by side, you see, oh, they are different. But that's all you need to change all the fonts. Just 3 lines, like 4 lines, one for import, 3, 4, like the different specific ones. If you want to find a good font, I recommend like first of all, just seeing what other people are doing. Being like, oh, this font is nice. It's like this one does well. There's this idea of font pairings because as the uh, a lot of people do a different font for the headings than the body text. And some people have strong opinions that there's pairs that work well with that. So you can just click for that, trial and error. The default fonts are fine, and especially if you care about accessibility, using commonly used fonts are typically also a great idea because the commonly used fonts are used a lot, so people that maybe have a harder time seeing them are more used to them. So there's a little bit of a familiarity. Obviously, some fonts are created to be more accessible, but obscure can sometimes be detrimental as well. Um, yeah, so there's a question about adding proprietary font that is still with this hard problem that is still correct, that is still how we do it, that is listed as a thing in the book of how to add a font that isn't imported like this. So that's still something you can do. So if you have your own font or border font, you can also add them. You just need to follow some specific setup that is in the book. All right, colors. Same thing. We have a number of SAS variables here that changes a couple of different things, right? So we change the background color, the text color, the title color. Links, which is both the clickable links, but also modifies the line progress bar at the bottom and the little menu button on the left hand side. So you're changing all those at once. And then the inline code, which is all the blue we're seeing right here. So not the code chunk, but just all the inline things. We have 5 colors right here. And we just set them like we do, right? And so this is like with 5 lines right here. Boom, we have a dot theme. Obviously, it's not that easy because we still need to like, how do we pit all of these? So there's this notion called color contrast, which is uh, uh, the idea of how easy some text is to read, and it's based on like the color of the background and the color of the text, but also the size of the text. So if you go to the bottom here, I might be able to put this into the chat real fast. There's many websites. I like this one. So you just put a foreground color and a background color in. So here, can I? Ooh. And there's little sliders too. So I wouldn't say, ooh, here we have a. And then we made it not work. So if I do, all right, right here. So here we have a background color of green and a foreground color of red. I'm just gonna finish my thought and then we will take the break. And it says that if you have a large font, so like the A up here, right? We can read the A's. That's fine. But any smaller colors, like the foreground color right here, and like some of the other ones, these colors are too similar that they can be a little bit hard to read. So when you're pitting colors, and they're like, you can, and also you can technically let the font also matters. Well, you can try it out, right? So when you're pitting colors, when we go back here, you want to check the background color against all the other ones and make sure they have an appropriate contrast. Because otherwise, you're alienating a good amount of people that otherwise have a hard time seeing that. It's not optional. And there's no easy way of doing it. You just have to go on a website and fiddle around with it. And there's just also like it can be really hard to put yellow on a slide deck because yellow doesn't contrast that well with white. All right, this is the perfect time. We'll 10-minute timer. There's a question in the chat. I think I will field just because I wasn't planning on covering it. So, and it's in the recording, so it's probably fine. So it's asking about nested lists and ooh, doo-doo-doo. No. Oh, right. So if you want to do it, we can do a list. Right. This is how we would just do a normal list. The unordered list in Quarto, we can make it. We can make it ordered by giving it numbers. Interestingly, you can also like you don't actually have to enumerate them as you go. So you can technically just call all of them one, and then Quarto will up someone eventually. I think it might be Paint Art will say, oh, you're having a numbered list, but let me number them for you. If you want to do nesting, you need to do, I want to say you need to like do 4 indentations or something like that. So if you do this, that should work. So let's put this in the top of a slide and then try to preview it and see what happens. Ooh. Yeah. And then you can oh, and you can continue moving in. So like that's how you do the nested part of that. All right, 3, 2, 1. Yeah. All right. So we talked about how to set the colors and how to help make sure the colors work the way they should work. Um, then where do you get them? Like some people are lucky. They have a brand guideline that creative made for you. So you just need to I drop those colors. You can just like write them down and put them in and you're done. You can also find color palettes different ways. Noticeably, these are different color palettes than from a data visualization because we want high contrast in them. And we typically also want like a very light color and a dark color or reverse to make sure that text and background work. You know, to pull from images. One thing I love is doing Pinterest. You can do like Pinterest and you put in your vibe, and there's a bunch of color palettes in there. I love Pinterest for that. Um, yeah. So the highlight style is different. So we like it just works a little bit like so. These color changes most of the things, but it doesn't do exactly everything. So there's like other ways of handling how code chunks work, and I will go to the bird and it explains it in detail more because it isn't that hard, it's just more tedious to change how the code block changes. Last one sizes, and in probably this, we have some size variables. This one is really neat because we have this idea of a presentation of root size. So we specify that, and then everything else is based off it. So the root size have um, some value, but then the heading is set. I want to say the default is set to 2 times the root size. So I think by default, the root is always twice as big. Like these headers are always twice as big as this text. So if we change the root, everything else changes with it. So we can either hard code the heading sizes to like specific value or change the ratio to be like, actually, I want 1.8. So then these are also very simple. Here I'm showing both. So I'm changing the root size and I'm hard coding in the header sizes. But then I'm saying the font size of the code blocks should be 90% of the root size. And this is what it looks like. This maybe this isn't the best sizing, but I wanted to just show something that was felt different enough where you feel, oh, this is new. And then I like to think that that's my um that if you know how to set those and you don't need to set all of them, you just set the ones you want, right? So if you already want the white background slides, you don't need to change that one. Knowing about these size variables, that's your 10 minutes right there. You just need to find them, set them. It's fairly fast, and as we can see, your slides look a lot different. Obviously, this is just a random dart theme, but you can really change it to what you want fairly easily. When you run out, we need to do write our own rules. So this is where you need to know CSS coming in. And how I'm doing it, if I don't know, is we open our developer tool. It's up there somewhere. Developer view, open developer, Command Shift I is what I pressed. There's this little button that you can click and select different things. It will look different in different browsers. This is a Chromium based one, so this is how it looks over here. And so I can see here I clicked on the heading and it shows, oh, there's an H2. Nice. But I already know how to change that. But let's say I want to change the block quote. I don't know what that's called. So we click on it again, saying, oh, this is technically a P, but it's inside what's called a block quote element. So then we can say, hey, I want to change the color to pink. That's a bad color. Because that is hard to see. But we can like change it around. But we can see, oh yeah, that's nice. We can do like that. And also because it has like all the variables in here, right? So you can say text, transform, and I can like that's this neat thing where you can be like, oh, automatically uppercase everything. So you can do lots of things. So that's how I do it. I If I don't know how to do something, I click this thing, click on the thing, see where it is. Then you can modify it live right here. And when you're done, you copy copies this out into your file. And then that should work. And that's what I already said. All right. And that's how you write a rule. So one of the things, yeah, I kind of already showed this right now. We can also do this neat thing where we can define a class to use multiple times. So if I want, instead of manually putting a span around something to like highlight a word in light with a color, instead of saying color equal blah blah blah, every time I do it, we do a shortcut. We can do a here what I call a highlight. So this highlight class that changes the background colors. It changes colors, background colors, a little bit of fonting, a little bit radius, right? Called highlight. So now, if I now put this highlight class on a span, it will take all of those attributes and put it in here. So this is like, boom, I want to make a point. I'm highlighting right here. Um, I use this a lot. So if you want to have a couple of colors to highlight things with throughout your slide, specify the class once and reuse it. Um, yeah, so the question, do we know when to include the reveal and slide? Uh, it it never, I feel it almost never hurts to add it because we're in it. The reason why you sometimes need to do it is if the theme that came bundled with reveal.js are specifying something and you don't put it. If you just say blood throat, change the color. But the theme that was bundled with it said reveal, slide, blood throat, change the color. Then it wins because as CSS has this idea of specificity and like the most precise way of specifying something wins. So saying all blood throats that are in a slide in a reveal thing wins over all blood throats. So putting it in will help. But this is also like I think I end up doing trial and error a lot here for this anyway, which is a sad answer for that. There's also this other thing I call slide variants, which is just a teaser of something to do, uh, where I showed how we can change a little bit, but we know to change a lot. So we can not just specify, like we made a class, like CSS class, but for the whole slide. And we add a bunch of stuff to it. And this way, we end up doing basically no styling in our code document. We just add these classes to specific slides, and then we put content in and then everything works. And we can do some neat things here. So one of the things here we can say in our variant, we change the background color and the color, but we can also specify other things in it. So we say the headers and the links need to have a different vibe to them. Um, I we have the section header where like the section slide is different. I like the slide variant on that where give it a fun color, a little pop of color to like help that people into a different mode. If you've been around for a little bit, there was the syringeon slides that had the inverse class. That's basically a slide variant where it made dark mode for a slide. We can do the same thing here. Um, I also liked it for like, oh, if it can also be a fun thing to do in like the slides that do the demo or the results. So we have normal slides have a color, but in slides with exercise have a different color. So a bunch of different ways of doing this. We are skipping to your turn. Content layout, full screen. All right. So basically, when you do things, content shows up how it's been doing so far, starts at the top, moving down, moving to the right. And that's fine. You don't need to do more than this. But I'll be showing a couple of things you can do to expand this idea. Columns. Well, we've seen columns. you can change the widths, right? So we can, instead of, it doesn't have to be 50-50, it can be like 40-60, whatever. We can also do more because it's just a div inside. We can just change the class. So now, oh, we have three columns. You can't really do more than like, you maybe do four, but eventually the width of the tile, like you can't put anything in them anymore. But that's technically something you can do. Um, I also if you really want to move something to the side of the slides easily, I use columns where I don't put something in the left one. So I want to move some content 30% over. I made it a two column thing with 30% left column, and now it's moved over. Is it the best way of doing it? No, but it's pretty fast. Especially if you're in an IDE that has the autocomplete with the columns. But this is a fast way of doing it. Um, Filling the slide. So everything has the question about accessibility. I don't think so. I think the way it will in a screen reader or something like that, it is being read left to right. So it will be like, oh, first column has this information, left column has this information. Obviously, if you're aligning things visually, that doesn't come across in a screen reader. It doesn't won't be able to tell that whatever is on the fifth line matches across the column. So you would have to explicitly state that in the slides itself, if that is what the question was leaning towards. We can also, like, sometimes we just want text bit on the screen, and we kind of want it as big as possible, but we also don't want to fiddle with the numbers all the time. So there's this handy class called rfit text. And if you, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, well, that's a bummer. Oh, that's even worse. All right. Oh, that is. Phew. All right. If you put rfit text around something, it uses a little bit of JavaScript and changes the font size so it is as wide as possible within the confine of the slide area, because it then these slides fill to the screen. So now it's like, oh, it fits perfectly. Now everything fits well. If we put more text in it, it changes all the text to the same color. So here we have two lines, but only the top line fits in the width. Adding two of these makes it so now they're both the same width, but obviously different font size plus different number of letters. So this is like a fun way of just putting like a thing across, being like, oh, never touch the test set. Put that in a bit chunk like this. Images, we can add them in a couple of different ways. Um, we can just add this image, how it comes, and it just flows. We can absolute it, and we put it as a background. Um, the way we normally put an image is how we just do things in Quarto. With the syntax is the exclamation point, brackets, names of file, and the image just shows up. And it moves just fine. So if you put stuff before it, it moves down. If you put stuff after it, that will be below it. Like it is in line with everything else. There's this notion of absoluteness.
Emil, there's
Um,
a
yeah.
question before we go any further. Do you have any good tips for how we can have text or images or divs react to the height of a div?
Oh, that's really
Dan says
hard.
he's tinkering with
Yes.
image heights all the time.
Yeah. So the hard thing is that because these are HTML slides, it has a really good notion of how wide the slide is, but it doesn't have that good notion of how long, how tall it is, because normally HTML documents allow you to scroll. There is a section um, in the book about how to do this. It's especially about, I want to call it spread or something like that. Basically, if you have a list of elements in like a list. If you only have three items on a list, sometimes it looks weird on a slide. So getting the spacing right. That I wrote some code that you can steal from the web from the bot that helps you with the height, but that is hard. It's a hard problem just in general, and a lot of times you just have to manually put in the height, which is sadly what it is right now. Sorry, I couldn't answer better. for that. Um, the other way of adding an image is this idea of absolute. So divide the absolute class and divide these attributes. And now the image appears where we specified it is. So I said I want it to be near the top and to the right, and it is. I can change those and it moves around. This will then overlap with any other content you have. Very important. So all the other content will flow how it normally does. Absolute will disregard and just overlay or underlay depending on the order. And you specify width, height, and then the directions. You only need one of the left and right and one of the top and bottoms, depending on which easier what you do. And you do in anything. You don't have to do in images, absolute words, and anything, code, images, text, whatever. You can really move anything around. Uh, One quick thing to note is images by default stop at 95%. So sometimes you're like, oh, why? I'm keep making the height taller, but the image stays the same. It's like, oh, because reveals tries to stop you from having an image that is bigger than the slides. If you unset it, you can then like technically zoom in, have the image be larger than the slides if you so wish. So that's like the thing we're showing right here. Now we can do like end to end easy. Another thing we can do is set an image as a background image. I don't use it that often, but it's still a thing we can do. It looks nice. The main thing, it doesn't show it here, but one of the problems with having the background image is that it's set to the width. So the text on top will shift in relation to your aspect ratio. So it's really hard to place something specifically on it if you're using a background image like this. Like this looks fine here, but it might look weird if we're on a 4:3 monitor. So that's like my main, be careful about that. Another thing is like if we put text on top of an image here, it can be hard to tell. It's like it's hard to read because it's like whatever. We add a little bit of styling here. I'm just adding a background color and a little bit of a padding. And now we can see it. You can do whatever. Um, yeah, there's a little bit of transparency. You don't need it. Like it's you need to play around with it. That's just a thing you can do. But that is a way to always have text on any slide, no matter the background, as long as you make sure to add enough content like this. Um, I have this fun idea of like like a float uh in it. So this is you can steal it from the slide from the web. So you just have to copy this. And this is a really fun notion where like now I'm setting a background color and so you set this globally in your theme. And now if you set a background color or a background image, that will appear behind like the slide content area. So you never have to worry about the content of your slides being hard to read, but you still get that splash of color or like if you want to go for a mountain theme, you still see the mountain in the peripherals of your slides, but they never interfere. There's like a different way of doing it. So it's basically the same ideas before, but they're hard coded in. I find this like in a way kind of fun to add a splash without actually being hard to write around. Uh, I assume this would work well in PDF mode as well. If not, it's a bot and we'll fix it. Um, Plots, it's like I like how images do, but there's a couple of other things we need to do with them to make them look a little bit nicer sometimes. So we have the width and height aspect ratio is basically the same, so you only tune one instead of those. DPI uh, is like dots per inch. So if the images are outputted to like a PNG format, it like the resolution, and we can move it around. Um, I find it default make the axis text a little bit too small. So I changed them around a little bit. So now we have a plot here. I think this is just a normal GG plot. No, no, not G, normal base up chart. By changing the sizing a little bit, makes the answers a little bit more readable. Um, if here it looks well because it's a chart on a white background. If we have a non-white background, it won't look good because most plotting software plots with the background, which typically is white. We can fix this. We fix them differently in different languages, sadly. So in if you do R things, you can set the background of the graphical device to be transparent in like the knitted chunk option. So you copy the first thing, put in the YAML. If you're in Python, you need to do it differently depending on how it's done, but you can also set the background color to a transparent color because we want to avoid this. Here we have a lovely little off-white color, but it's white background chart. It doesn't look great. Making it transparent makes it flow well, makes it feel in. And then everything needs to match, right? So if you're having a, a dark theme, you need to then also invert all the colors you use for the chart to be white so you can see them. But adding a transparent background is just a really neat, nifty little fast thing you can do to make it look nice. Highlighting code, um, we can do one by one. So if you set this highlighting like code, line numbers, arguments in our chart, it allows us to do this neat thing where, oh, here's our code. Let me show the first line, then the next two, then the last one. Um, so it's a way of like going through. I actually don't use it that often, but I know that a lot of people like it. It also with computed charts. The vertical line here just specify the groups. So there's a lot of things happening there. Sometimes you need to do more than that, like more than line by line. Um, one thing I do, which is way more intense, is hand rolling it. So you start by writing this mono class. So it's just making a class that makes the code mono spaced, so it looks like the code charts. And then I create this monstrosity where I'm just writing the code as in, but now I can do spans on the code things in I want, and then do fragments on just the thing I wanted. The thing is, for this to work, you also need to add these invisible line breaks. So it's a little bit of extra work to make this happen. Um, but you can do things that you otherwise couldn't. Like this is really, I find this really nice, and you can like do so much more with it, but I wouldn't do it on the daily. This is only if you really needed to like point at something. Yeah. All right. Interactivity. All right. So we've already seen some of this beforehand, where normally when we advance, it goes to the next slide like this. But sometimes when we advance, something happens on the slides like this, right? Like we are seeing, um, while this in a way could be done as a separate image, like just a new slide we're moving over, each of these list items are not a new slide. They are just we're updating the content on our current slide. Um, so I think that's like a fun, interesting thing to do, and we do so much with it. And a lot of my fun extra work has been around really exploiting this notion. And all of this comes in what reavealjs called fragments. So that's the mechanism that triggers something to happen on the slide instead of advancing. So if you have a fragment on a slide and you press next, the fragment will happen instead of moving to the next slide. It's only when we're out of fragments we move on to the next one. And we've always seen this with our incremental lists, right? Which are technically written like this as a div. We put a div around our list and div it class incremental. And there's a little bit like reavealjs does a little bit of stuff underneath the hood to then turn it into a bunch of fragments. Because this is how we see it. And we've been seeing this all along. Uh, am I not? Oh yeah. So basically, this is what you're writing, but technically you could have written it like this as well. But that is it's a shorthand that we added. But the way we do it is the fragment is another like CSS class that then be picked up by the VLJS to do interesting things. So we just add it to our diffs and our spans like we would otherwise. If we don't do anything, we just put the fragment here, will make that content appear. So we'll hide it first and then appear. But we do so much more. And this is where the fun starts, right? So it defaults to fade in. So you don't actually have to put fade in here. It just comes in it. But we can modify it saying not just this is a fragment, but we can make it highlight in red, draw in size, fade out a little bit. So this is how it is. So now when we're advancing, text appears, something changes colors, it draws. I don't know why it moves. And it fades out a little bit. So this is um this should work as a thing. I'm seeing a question about fragments and table columns. I am not aware of that issue, so I'll look up that later, because I don't remember that being a thing. I also don't know if I use table columns that much, but I'll look into it. Um, you can also specify the order. So generally, they trigger as appearing. Mikaël is informing me lovingly that I don't need to put data here. So you can either put data fragment index or just fragment index and give it a number, and it will appear in that number. You can also have multiple things happen at the same time. So that's sometimes nice. You want to have text appear on one side and an image appear at the same time. Easy. You just div them the same number. So here, like out of order words, just as well. It comes with like 10 built-in fragments, but we can add more. And this is like where I find a lot of joy in life. Um, there's two ways of doing it. One of them is CSS, where we do start, like we just div the elements, some styling before and after, and then the infrastructure knows how to tween between it. We can also do JavaScript. Obviously, that's more now we're adding a whole nother programming language, but there's a lot to do with it. So let's see some examples. So in the SCSS world, uh, there's three stages. Before we activate the fragment, when is the torrent fragment, and after. So we just have to think about what styles do I want before we trigger it, when we trigger it, and after. And we don't have to specify all of them. So all the ones you've seen so far only did two of them. It's only really been before and after. And torrent is just being treated as after as well. We're combining the last two. But technically, we can split it into three. And you do it like this. You you put this in your SCSS file. The my name here is the name of your um, fragment class. So you give it whatever name you want. Everything else stays the same, and then you just put some CSS in here, and that changes the different stages of your content. Uh, all that matters. So it has to be like this. It's just like this is the staff folder, and you just put the names in. Um, by default, they're always hidden. So if you want something to appear, let's start on the slides and then maybe change color. You need to make it so the visibility is no longer, you need to unset the visibility and opacity. Because otherwise you like it just if you had the highlight one and wanted text that then have some yellow appear on them, it will look weird because it will start not being there and then appear at the same time as it turns yellow. And it's like that's not what we want. So that's just a caveat. Here, here I'm doing a thing where I am changing. It starts gray, turns when it's turned, it has a color. Oh no, it starts invisible because we're kind of doing a modified version of the increment list. So it starts being invisible. It then shows up as I want to say this is a purple color. And then when the next one happens, then all the previous turns gray. So this is really like here we oh no. Oh, that's not I messed up somehow. So that we won't be able to see that one. But that is essentially how you do it. Maybe I should have I don't know what I messed up here, but that's a thing. I can show it because it's in the but fragments. Oh yeah, so here's the similar idea, right? So here I'm showing that as I move back and forth, the the before is red, current is green, and after is blue. So we technically have three stages to work with. Oh no, am I? Yeah, and we can do a lot of that. We don't have to set the turn, we can set all the other ones. Here's another little example of why um, the SCSS is nice because we are reducing a little bit of, plus the visible is like another class on top of it. So we can, in a way, remove a little bit of duplication. We just write what we need. So here's a way to, oh, we highlight in orange. So we are updating it to say, make it so it always appears, and then when it's visible, turn it orange. And now we have this. And we can imagine that if we're using the SSS threads from earlier, we can put this in a for loop and have like as many different highlight colors as we want as fragments. Oh, that's what I'm showing right here. So this stays the same. And if we want to add a new color, we just add a new color to this first line right here. And now we have highlight colors that we just add. So we just add as many fragments as we want because it doesn't matter. They're fairly easy to add once we have the structure down. Um, we can only change things that the engine know how to tween. So like color, text, size, border, opacity. It can fade between them. It other so oh yeah, tweening. So this is like a computer science thing where like if you have an element of a certain size and shape or color, like it's a size and a color, and you want it to change to a different size and color. Tweening is the act of calculating all the intermediary steps between it. So like for size, we just make like a straight line of sizes and like have it grow, and same with color. We can just like find a path in the color space, but how we do it and that the tween, the different ways of doing it. But if we don't have it, if we're trying to change between things it doesn't know how to tween, we just did an instantaneous change of it just pops out and pops in with the new one. Um, yeah, and as a note, if you have a fragment that deals with sizes and positions, it sometimes doesn't look great because if you make text bigger but there's text below it, it shifts it down. Or if you try to highlight a word with a span inside of like a paragraph and made that bigger, not only are you making awkward changes in size, you also might force a reflow because now the words don't fit on the line. They need to go back on the next line. And it's hard to make look nice. So just avoid fragmenting with sizes and positions if it's a content that needs to be within other things. So that's all we can do with SCSS, which is in many ways everything we've shown so far mostly has been SCSS fragments, but there's another way, um, which is the JavaScript ones. Which is also this is a lovely time if you use AI for agents like this, because AI knows how to do JavaScript. And if you use AI agents, there is a still that you can load from the boot that has information of how to write fragments with JavaScript and SCSS that work with reavealjs and Posit. But basically, instead of having three states, we have two events. We are being told when a fragment is being shown, and we are shown when it's being hidden, which is basically the fragment that happens when we do go back. Um, this is where it's a little bit harder because the SCSS knew that because it had the before and after, and it knew how to go back and forth. If we're doing fancier things with JavaScript, we need to write it both ways. So if we have a thing that like scrolls down on a page, we also need to be able to scroll back up. So sometimes if you write a JavaScript fragment incorrectly, you need it still works forward, but then you can't go back. So then you just need to be confident enough that you don't ever go back in your slide, and that may be fine. Um, so the way I wire it up is in our YAML, we put this include after body, and in it I put HTML document. In that HTML document, I put a script tag in it where I then put my JavaScript in. And the JavaScript would be like this. So we are putting a thing and we are saying, oh, my class is my name of my fragment, and then this structure will know when to trigger when that class fragment is done. We can do so many more things. Like one of the fun things we can do is we don't need uh, content here. So a fragment is just something that triggers, and JavaScript decides what has to happen. So here we can make a fragment and give it like this data color orange. So when we advances that, it could be change the background to orange. If we know the JavaScript to change it, we can just in a way put it in the fragment itself. Like in the not the fragment itself, we can put it in the div itself, the information it needs. Instead of hard coding a bunch of stuff in the JavaScript, we can have it read the information from the document. Sometimes useful. Um, One thing you can do that's kind of neat is this like idea of scrolling. So, and do I have an example? Yeah. So sometimes we have code that is too long. It doesn't fit. And you could go in manually, move your mouse in and click on it and then let scroll up and down. But with a fragment, we can like trigger the scrolling behavior, which like you need to fit like obviously I doodled this for so long trying to figure it out. But basically there's a reveal object that's available in our slide, because that's how everything happens. And that's our torrent slide. And then like, I'm selecting what I need and then find out, oh, I didn't do a scroll too tall to it. It's like this is a thing you can do if you know enough JavaScript to do it or know someone to do it. But this is really an interesting thing we can do. Um, yeah, so here, because I am moving forward, if I didn't add the reverse fragment, it would just stay down. So this is like I'm doing the reverse here by saying, oh, now scroll to the top. Um, I've been actually using JavaScript Reveal fragments this whole time um, to advance these embedded slides in my slides. So whenever I show an example, that's actually a fragment. And this is the fragment in it. It finds its way in, it uses a little bit of JavaScript to attach itself to the reveal object inside and then presses right. And the way I trigger it is then just adding this empty span outside of it. So advance slide. So if I'm having a showing a slide there that I want to advance twice, I'm putting two of these in it. So when I advance, it knows just move it later. Um, so this is actually happening a lot. Um, we will see some of these notions of fragments later, but I use a lot of them in the extensions I will touch at in the end. Um, and you can really go really far with this. So this is um, here is a slide that where we have code on the left-hand side, and this is ggplot specifically, and I'm just showing the other side on the other end. And I always thought this was neat, but I also always mentally thought about a ggplot as like layers, and we can use a fragment to like go through this notion of like animation where we're looking at things one at a time. This is very handcrafted stuff, but in the end, this is done using fragments that then it's using this JavaScript library called anime.js, and you can click the link at the footer. It brings you to a bunch of these kind of like animations, but they're done as fragments. So if you're trying to I think they're really nice for teaching because you can be like, it's not a video. So you can say, oh, let's look at this and we move over here. And then if there's a question, you just stop. You don't advance. You can go back. You can move forward. This is technically all done as fragments. They they're handcrafted. So you either have to hand modify stuff or use AI to help you set it up. But it's using the fragment idea. And I think that's very powerful. I am going to skip the this last section just because I think it is more important we talk about extensions before people have to leave. But then it's all there. You can see it as you go. Um, extensions. So like much like with R and Python, everything is great. But where it becomes useful is its extensions, its packages, its libraries. Like you very rarely use Python, just Python. We very rarely just use R. We typically add in a package or library. And the same notion extends to Quarto. We have this idea of Quarto extensions that is basically just more like code that other people have written that is bundled in a way that you can easily just add it to your project. And so it's just a folder of different stuff that then Quarto essentially just copy pastes into your repo and then know how to read and add on. I'm selfishly showing mostly my stuff, but there is like hundreds of extensions out there that all do different things. Um, you add them in your terminal, you go to the project you're in, Quarto add, and then the name. Like you can either do the GitHub name of something, but since this is technically just one for each day of the year, that's fine. Um, it can also be a file, so you can also have extensions internally in your company behind a firewall, whatever, as long as the terminal has access to the file, Quarto will know to copy it over. So it doesn't have to be public. You can have internal ones as well. And just downloads everything. And then depending on it, you might want to put a little like plugin. You already seen one. This is what I call the code window. Um, So you put it as a reveal plot in the YAML. They all show, all the readmes of all the extensions will show how to set it up. And this one is like kind of easy. You just have your toad chunk and you put a div around it, div with class toad window, and here R, because I know it's R thing. And you put a little text on it, and it renders these toad chunks that we've been seeing so far. So it's just a little visual flair that adds. I find they're nice. They break up a little bit, but they're not actually useful. They're more visual thing that helps it also because here in this where we're doing multiple file types, it's a nice little visual indicator of what type of file we're in. Another amazing extension is the font awesome extension as the short code. So if you want to add an icon instead of like just install the font awesome one and you just put this little syntax and then you just change this name right here, then it gives you all the different icons that comes with it. There's top of other icon extensions that work the same way. Rough notation is another one of mine that is also fragment based. So you do it like this, you give it like a fragment name, and there's also some options you can add on top of it. And now you have this little like hand-drawn fragment. So we're highlighting, but it's fun. A little different. Uh, Another little fun thing I did is this checklist fragments. So you use a syntax like this all in the README, but now we have a little bit more of a fun like checklist idea. And then it's not super useful, but I enjoy it. Chat bubbles the same way. We're using a list of divs that now allows us to do this fun back and forth things in slides, which is kind of fun. Uh, this one's the most important one to show. So if you're making slides, one of the things you will probably have seen is like the image is fine and the absolute thing is fine, but like, it can be kind of hard to like mess around with the numbers one by one. Install the editable extension, add this to it, and now you get this banner at the top. And if you click modify, you can now move around your image as you want. Maybe you want to like make it opaque. You can add a new text field right here. I can say hello. So now you're modifying your slides as you go. You press save and you save it overlapping, and now you in a way have like an IDE modifier way of doing things. That's like that. It also can do like in a way I'm trying to replace PowerPoint for the data person with this. There's more support coming later. But this is a way it also has technically we can add arrows and shapes. They don't have installed, but basically you can also just drag and drop an arrow to something. There's more, but I think we're out of time. But that is partly planned, as in I put more extensions than I thought I had time for. So we're technically out of time. I'm so happy to see all of you here. And thank you for everybody, like all Isabel and everybody else in the chat being like really helpful with fielding questions. It definitely helped me with time as well. And some of them I didn't know. Like that we're all in this today. I don't know everything. So I'm grateful for all of you to be there.